And we thought maybe a few minutes afterwards as a postscript to some thoughts you might have. And I also want to tie this into some thoughts that I know Augusto has shared with me in the past, particularly what I was struck by with your observation on fatalism and the intellectual community, particularly in this case of the United States, developing an analysis which leads us perhaps toward despair. What then would you say? What are the mechanisms? What are the procedures and the strategies for moving beyond this?
Look, I think that first of all, the question is not for me to look for methods, for example, or techniques. For me, the question is to have practice and in discussing and reflecting on the practice to try to understand the reasons why he or she had the practice and for what, for example. Another point which is important for me is how to get or how to reach as much as possible the raison d'être of the facts, of the things. For example, let us suppose I am hungry, 1 month without eating well, I don't have a job, I don't work. Instead of falling into the belief immediately that this is God, this is how God, for example, is proving me. Instead of that, why not to look for the concrete reasons which can explain the injustice of society, for example. You see, then, for me, replacing the fatalist attitude is a question of knowing with much more rigor reality. It's a question, then it's an epistemological question, a question which concerns to knowledge, to knowing. It's a question of politics, and because of that, it's a question of education. That is a real critical education has to work in order to overcome fatalistic positions.
And perhaps there's there needs to be a desire to overcome the fatalism.
Yes, of course. And because of that, the struggle against fatalism implies the concrete hope. You see, that is in order for me, to the extent that I begin to discover reasons for having hope, for inventing hope, I am overcoming the immobilization of myself and of history. That is, I have hope because I begin to have a future. Without future, it's impossible hope. Fatalism is the absence of a future. It's nothing is possible tomorrow. It's fatalism. Hope, on the contrary, plays with future, which nevertheless has to be done through the transformation of today. Hope inserts me in the practice of the transformation of today.
Do you have hope?
Yes. I cannot live without hope.
Augusto, I wanted to ask you, in some conversations we've had, you have said one of the things that concerns you when you're working with people, and the forces perhaps arrayed against us, is a resignation, which I see as perhaps a parallel to part of what Paulo was saying about fatalism. What do you see is the method, the way? How does one deal with resignation? I'd ask the question.
Well, I'll put it this way. There is a play, Hamlet by Shakespeare, in which there is a character that says something, I don't know if I'm quoting correctly, but something in that sense, that theater is a mirror that you hold up to nature, to show nature its own image, its own features. And I always were uneasy with that definition of theater. I know it is like that. Theater, good theater shows the images of nature, the image of human relations and all that. But always I have dreamt of another form of theater in which not only you could show the image, but you could penetrate in that mirror and try to transform the image that is behind the mirror. And by transforming that image, even if this image in the mirror, but you are a person, a real person, you enter the mirror, you went there, and you transformed the mirror, and then you came back. Like Paulo Freire says in his books, this transitiveness is so important in literacy, so important in education. I think it's equally important in theater to be transitive, to use the power of the scene, to democratize the power of the scene that is a creation of the spectator. The spectator looking at one point, at one area, make that area become a static space, and then it's extremely more strong than the part where the spectators are. So I would like to create a scene which is a mirror, but a magic mirror in which you can go there and not accept resignation,
Yes.
not accept fatalism, but go there and change, transform. And I think the theater is a privileged a way of trying to transform reality and create another one with hope, like he said. Without hope you cannot do anything. You don't think about the future. If you have resignation, if you don't fight against what oppresses you, you are going to be oppressed all your life.
Yeah.
Is there a parallel that by creating theater you create hope? Is that?
I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah. It depends on the theater which you do.
Yeah, depends on what you do in the theater.
Have you ever worked in the theater yourself? Have you worked?
No.
Never? No?
No, never. When I was
Not
very,
yet, not yet. I'm not
not yet.
convinced.
But as a teacher, I am always in a scene. Scene?
Scene?
Yeah. As a teacher, it's impossible because the nature of education has a strong dimension which has to do with beauty. You know? Because of that, I am as radical in this understanding of education that, for example, I don't use the expression education through art. Because for me, education is already art. Nevertheless, I can do education through art, but it is as if I was just repeating what I do, because education is in itself art. And every time in history in which we lose the aesthetical dimension of education, we destroy education.
Yes.
I have no doubt about that. In being the educator, an artist, he is a theater man or woman, he is a poet, he or she is a desenhista, painter, no?
Someone who draws.
Yeah.
Drawer.
Yes.
Drawer.
Because to the extent that education is a process of forming the being, it's impossible to conceive the formation of the beings out of beauty. To see that is no education without aesthetics, or without ethics, without politics, without knowing education is all these things together. Because of that, it cannot be reduced into techniques. It's a crime against the human beings.
This is wonderful. I want to thank you so much for talking with both of you. I know we have many things to do, and this is our postscript, and thank you for being here. Appreciate it so much.
What's that?
It was